Wow, I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest, everybody. But my name is Shane Cuthbert. I wear many hats. I've had many labels over the years, and we'll get into that. But firstly, I wanted to thank the Justice Reform Initiative for having people like me with lived experience of the prison system, the justice system, not only to speak, but to attend, to engage with others with lived experience in this space and learn from each other. It's one thing to speak about second chances, and it's another to make space for people whose controversial histories, names and public stories are complicated. I also want to thank those of you in the room that paid it forward, because without you guys, some of us wouldn't be able to attend. So for those of you that did that, I'd really like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I think we had roughly 40 to 50, maybe, Tina, lived experience, people with lived experience of the justice system that thanks to your contribution, we're able to make it here to speak and attend and gather, and I think that's really, really incredible. So I want to talk a little bit about spent conviction reform today. And for those of you in the room that don't know what spent convictions are, they were created in a world some time ago where we had filing cabinets, police databases and court records. Now, the law in Australia, in many jurisdictions and many states and territories, says that somebody can move on, but the internet says they can't. Now, spent convictions laws are meant to recognise rehabilitation. They are based on the idea that someone has done their time and remained offence-free for a period. They reach a magical point, I say magical, where they are no longer defined by their past. This matters for employment, this matters for housing, this matters for education, volunteer work, and it matters personally. It goes to belonging. And the purpose is not to pretend that the past never happened. It's to stop the past permanently blocking the future. And before I speak on policy, I'd just like to start with the human reality. For those of you unfamiliar with my story, it comes with a trigger warning. I was once a little boy, severely bullied at school. I was molested by my older cousins and physically abused at home. I was taken to Redbank House as a 9-year-old child, and no surprise, I ended up in prison. I've been to prison 4 times, 2 different states, 7 different jails. I might look like a big tough guy with tattoos, but I assure you I am not. I went into prison 12 years ago with a broken leg, having failed at trying to take my own life because life wasn't going so well for me at the time. But here I was arrested, put into jail for the first time with a broken leg. I was in prison for 4 days before I was so severely assaulted that I ended up in a wheelchair. I was also sexually abused at one point by my cellmate. Since then, I've done some incredible things. I graduated law 2 years ago. The magistrate that sentenced me I wasn't expecting that applause, but thank you very much. Remarkably, Pat O'Shane AM, who sentenced me as a young person, supported me and attended my graduation. We now work together on youth justice reform in Queensland. I've consulted with the Queensland Parliament many times, more regularly with the Labor government. Unfortunately, we have an LNP government at the moment that, well, they're tough on crime, tough on kids. The Sentencing Advisory Council, but I also do a lot of work with at-risk, disadvantaged youth. That's who I was. That's who I still am in some ways. I understand the barriers that they're facing and the things that they go through, and of all of my achievements, I think my greatest achievement is working with the young people. Despite all that, I learnt one thing. The sentence doesn't end when the court says it does. Because the internet doesn't. By the time I was 9 years old, I'd appeared in most national news programs around the country. Channel 9, Current Affair, Women's Weekly, Women's Day. I think arguably I have the most media attached to me than possibly anybody in this room. It's quite significant, and over the years I've been given some pretty horrible labels. I've been called a monster, I've been called evil, and it started as an out-of-control kid when I was 9 years old. Now those labels affect how people see me before I even step into the room. And I'm not alone here. Spoken to a few people at this conference about spent convictions. One story in particular, another person with lived experience here can't get a job delivering pizzas in an Uber because of their convictions more than 10 years ago. I've got a friend that was also meant to appear today. He couldn't be here today. He's asked that I say some words. We all know who this young person is. We've all seen the horrible images of this young person. It's my friend Dylan Voller. Dylan Voller was a victim of state violence as a child. And still to this day, he faces barriers to employment and housing more recently because people Google him and all they see is that image of his trauma. It still traumatises him to this day. This is where I'd like to hand over to my friend Tina. What I've described is the lived experience, but Tina can speak a little bit more to the policy and the right to be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. When Shane and I were first talking about the whole idea of spent convictions, or about what it meant to have your conviction follow you for the rest of your life, I sent him a paper that I wrote back when I was an undergrad, and I was doing a course on public policy. And this is a paper that I wrote that was supposed to be published within the university magazine, but once the editor found out who I was, they decided it would not be okay to publish it. So it kind of, it's a moment anyway. Yeah, it proved my point exactly. So it was called, it was a digital rights policy, and the whole idea of it was using a European term called a right to be forgotten, and it was a roadmap for second chances in a digital age. So, and it was through my own experience of navigating re-entry post-prison that I could see how digital records from carceral system involvement, regardless of the outcome, right, regardless of whether a conviction was even recorded, are now eternally accessible with little in the way of protection for how that data is used or misused. And whilst individual data rights relating to the handling and accuracy of personal data exist under the Australian privacy principles, there is no explicit right to be forgotten that would really encourage fair chances for formerly incarcerated people. So what is the right to be forgotten? It's an adopted concept from France's right to oblivion. Of course, there's a much more beautiful way of saying it in French, and I'm not even going to attempt to butcher it here. But the French acknowledgement of a right to live a life in dignified privacy is born out of a valued history of protecting citizens' reputations from the media. In 2018, the European Union enacted sweeping privacy protections under the General Data Protection Regulation, so the GDPR, which explicitly allows citizens the right to be forgotten. Under Article 17, the right to be forgotten is explained as follows. You will be able to ask to delete your personal data if you no longer want it to be processed and there is no legitimate reason for a company to keep it. For example, when you type your name into an online search engine and the results include links to an old newspaper article about the debt you long paid, you will be able to ask the search engine to delete those links. So the GDPR is publicised as the toughest privacy and security law in the world, with a suite of bold measures designed to protect the data of every European citizen. The framework refreshingly recognised criminalised citizens as rights holders. Yeah. Article 17 states the data subject shall have the right to obtain from the controller the erasure of personal data concerning him or her without undue delay, and the controller shall have the obligation to erase that personal data without undue delay. And two provisions for erasure are really relevant. So one is a person can request the data be erased if the personal data is no longer necessary for the purpose an organisation originally collected or processed it for. Number two, an organisation is relying on legitimate interests as its justification for processing an individual's data. The individual objects to that processing and that there is no overriding legitimate interest for the organisation to continue with that processing. And similar to Article 17, which allows that explicit right to be forgotten, Article 10 defines the parameters and expectations for handling and sharing data related to criminal convictions. And processing of that kind of data can only be done under the control of the official authority or when authorised by law. So another policy lever that we can look at targeting privacy and equality of opportunity is the clean slate legislation in the US. And that was developed by grassroots organisations, adopted by political figures and leaders in order to address the disenfranchisement of the 1 in 3 American citizens with a criminal record. Proponents argue that 9 in 10 employers and 4 in 5 landlords use criminal record screening, and we all know, those of us in the room with lived experience, that this happens here too. So the clean slate legislation automatically seals or expunges an array of criminal records if citizens have been crime-free for a period of time, so it's not based on crime type. It's anticipated that as more states adopt that policy, millions of American citizens will be free from their past, able to participate in the legal economy and contribute to a falling crime rate. So if anyone wants access to my undergraduate paper, I'm more than happy to forward it on, which explicitly went into how we might develop that framework, but that is something that Shane is going to talk to here for the last few minutes.
Thanks, Tina.
I've had the right to be forgotten by Tina McPhee on my desktop for about 2 years. It's something that I refer to quite often. It's something that I'm proud of, and it's your work, and it's incredible. It's an honour to have you here as well, speaking with me today, Tina. What Tina has shown us is that this isn't just personal, right? It's a policy issue. You know, if I go back 10 years, there was a time when my mum, you know, she said, you should really consider changing your name. And all of the trauma that I'd been through at that point and that I'd faced, that probably hurt me more. You know, the woman that, you know, loves me most and gave birth to me saying, look, you've really messed this life up. You know, there's no sort of going back. But, you know, it's incredible that I'm here today, but I know that I will never get a second chance. There is too much out there about me, but that doesn't mean I can't stand here and advocate for the rest of my lived experience community to make sure that you guys can move on.
Is that they value the case, but they don't know what you're bloody doing today.
Exactly. Doesn't mean another generation should be permanently defined by their worst today, their biggest mistake, their childhood trauma, an old allegation or a headline. Nobody deserves a life sentence by search engine, and we can start today. For those of you in the room, for organisations, when someone applies for a job, a placement, housing, a volunteer role or an opportunity, do not let Google be the final decision maker. If someone has media attached to them, ask them about it. Give them the dignity of their own explanation. Look at who they are now, what they have done since, and what risk they actually exist and contribution they can make. For advocates, researchers, and service providers, make digital reintegration justice reform submissions, raise it with governments, include it in policy work, and support a nationally consistent right to review, correct, de-index, anonymise historical online material. And for everyone here, when you hear a person described by their worst headline, pause before repeating it. Ask what happened after the headline. Ask whether the person has changed. Ask whether that story has changed. Ask whether keeping that story searchable forever is actually making anybody safer. And for people with lived experience, do not assume that your past means that you have nothing to offer. In fact, the fact that you survived it, you learned from it, or are still trying to rebuild might be exactly what gives you something important to contribute. Thank you.
I have a confession. I said something to Shane
before he started, which I now regret. And
it really threw me off too.
I'm sorry. And you didn't get a first chance, brother.
And I'm going to make a statement. We protect fucking pedophiles. We blank out their names. And the people that have been traumatised by them. We get splashed right everywhere. And these fucking pests get to do whatever they want.
In my generation, brother, I was down the same fate as you. And I'm going back to the 80s. And it actually was quite worse back then. Labelling as a retard and all that. Uncontrollable behaviour. Attention-seeking government service like doxing it to monitor my movement and all that. Throw me in boys' home because they couldn't understand my behaviour outbursts. Family thing you spoke about, changing surname and that's like shame.
Yeah.
They are shame because we have a future.
We do.
And they don't want to believe that we did. But you know damn right, our futures are still going. Whether they are shaming or still want to shame today. A lot of my family members that used to shame me back then, I actually apologise for the language they used to me.
And look at you today.
And look at you too, bro.
Sitting here.
You too, bro.
And that's one of the most important things a colleague of mine who did some of her life in prison said to me is, I never got a first chance. Anyone else? Cry? Rick?
Sorry guys, I sort of ran off thinking I was done and I thought my time was up, but...
Never is, bro.
Just a quick observation, it's been some years since I applied on behalf of a client for a spent convictions here in South Australia. And I'm just talking to you about the rules, which I assume change from state to state, but here it's 10 years and there's a massive exemption, as you would know.
Yes.
And that is a sexual offence. So with the current political climate, that's not about to change. How would you advocate that?
We've just got to keep banging on to be heard. 2 years ago I ran a local and a state election campaign. I knew I wouldn't win. And all I was trying to do was set up a 24-hour youth centre for kids. I got hammered by the media. The former criminal, how dare you run? How dare you seek such a position? I lost by 411 votes. I had a current affair. A bunch of idiots came out the night before. They were harassing people in the lineup, you know, saying, who are you voting for? Do you know you're voting for a criminal? And, you know, heckling people. And I still come really, really close, and I raised a lot of awareness. And I think that's what it's about. It's about being visible. I mean, yeah, look, I could go get a job at Bunnings and I'd probably live a pretty happy life, you know, without the stress, the media and all of that sort of stuff, those narratives and those labels create for us. But it's not who I am. I've been through the ringer. I've faced some pretty tough stuff in my life, and it's just made me stronger. It's just made me more resilient and more determined to make change, especially for our young people.
Thank you. Mike down there.
Hey Shane. First of all, yeah, thanks for sharing your vulnerability there, mate. It's never easy. Hello, lived experience. I don't know what the technical term is there.
Expert. It's
experts with that. Okay. Curious. So I think Tina's touched on like a great what there, the GDPR. So some context is I've been looking into that deeply for the last few years because for those that don't know, if you have a conviction, you're also banned from dating apps. You're also banned from pretty much all insurers. Yep. So you're subjected to significantly higher out-of-pocket expenses across the rest of your life. So if your house burns down, you're probably fucked.
Yeah.
So my point is, the question is then, moving forward, spent convictions, obviously we need federal legislation, we need advocacy across the board there. But when it comes to things like the GDPR, where do you think we could, I guess, move towards collectively, whether it's local, national, or?
Look, I'm sort of throwing myself at everything, local, state, federal, because it is difficult. I mean, we've got a state government in Queensland now where I live that, you know, wants to give children life sentences. They suspended their own Human Rights Act to lock children in watch houses. So, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm just banging my head on a brick wall, but I'm still banging. And I think
I can send you a copy of my paper. It's got the whole framework in there.
Tina's, we're going to neatly segue into the next one, but if you do want to see something in the other room or stand up or move around, this is your time. But we just want to say thanks to Shane. Yeah, so now we've got Justin and the team. Sounds like a sitcom.